Hello, Dr. Grallo. Once again, this is Kelvin O. Howell Jr. with video two. Two more to go. This video is talking about furthermore some of the sessions this semester, as well as the outline, the second outline. So this video is presented to Dr. Richard Grallo, PhD, Professor of Applied Science, and the particular fulfillment of the requirements for legal and ethical issues in counseling, Audrey Cohen School of Human Services and Education, the Bachelor's of Professional Studies in Human Services, Spring 2019. So I don't want to make this video too long on my outline, but just to touch bases on it, I did mine on privacy and confidentiality. For me, it is a standard, but it ties really much into HIPAA. Growing up in the LGBT community and working with non-for-profits, HIV is a big issue with a lot of the non-for-profits. A lot of clients have HIV. So I know HIPAA is taken really seriously, or there's laws around it. And this is a law and counseling class. And a lot of times, from my personal experience, what I saw when working in the non-for-profit world was many breaches of confidentiality. For example, if I'm the case manager, if I'm the caseworker, the client discloses the status with me. I then may need to disclose, let's say, to my supervisor, whether they're masters in social work or someone that needs to sign off on my case notes, so they're going to know. However, other caseworkers and other staff that may work in the drop-in center or even maintenance or outreach does not have the right to know the status of that particular client. People, I think, assume when the agency is given the waiver or approval to know a client status that they just assume that means everyone in the agency, and I totally don't believe that that's what the HIPAA is designed for. So I think that violates most definitely the client's HIPAA. So that's kind of much what I feel about that and how I tied HIPAA into that standard. So I think in my last video I went over kind of like session 1 and session 2 with skills, relationship. I'm just going to summarize like a little bit for session 3, which I think we did with the purpose center education. So I'm actually going to jump down to section 4, client strengths and weaknesses. I think my job as a client, as the worker is to help the client tap into their strengths, and to help them develop with maybe a weakness. We already talked about privacy, informed consent, the protection from harm. I should never ever cause harm to a client, but I must also keep myself safe where a client cannot perform harm for me. I've had experiences that in the agency where clients got really violent, really hostile, and I used a harm reduction philosophy to remove myself, because sometimes it's not so much of the client that's like you could be triggering the client, and you can represent a trigger for the client. And when we're dealing with this type of work and clients, it's never about me, it's always about the client. So in that moment, if I'm triggering the client because it's bigger than me and it's about being client-centered, I have no problem removing myself, and that's what I did. Let me see. Sexual contact, most definitely. Even if a client, I'm 33, if a client was 30, there's no excuse for it. It's absolutely, I believe, should be prohibited. I don't care if it's 10 years later and I counsel the person. It is unethical because that person allowed me into a space, that was very intimate and sacred, and they did that under the scope of me being a professional and not under intimacy. So it's highly inappropriate. I know people that have done it. I've seen it. It didn't always play out well. So it's not nothing I would be interested in crossing. Confidential records, most definitely when you're finished with a case file, it should be filed away on the cabinet, locked, whatever the policy and procedure is under that agency. I know in the academic institution we did with FERPA. So understanding the policies and procedures, because those are all based on legalities to protect not only the agency but you as an employee, but also harm for the client. So just having files everywhere with names and stuff on it, totally inappropriate. Even with the email, log out of your email is appropriate. If you step away from your computer, you should lock it. If you're working on sensitive documentation. So that was like session 4. I went over that. Then you jump down to section 5, working with individuals. So most definitely, I like, for me working in counseling, I've always liked harm reduction perspective. Always want to meet a client where they are, not overly identifying or empathizing with someone, but creating a safe space, understanding from the moment you walk into the room or the moment the client walks in the room, all of that means the environment, the tone of your voice, your mannerism, the behavior in which you greet them, that is all a part of the counseling session, to the way the room is set up, to the lights, to all of that plays a role in the counseling session. So I think we would have to be aware of that. If there's a stacks of paper on your desk and there's a pen or your desk look cluttered, it can send a message to the client that you're busy, you're too consumed to deal with them. They're not a priority. Eating and drinking, it's not a priority for what I'm doing, so you're eating and drinking. All of these can be perceptions, so you want to make sure we're as professional as possible and as on point as possible for when dealing with clients. And I say that from being someone that went to counseling myself. If you look like you got a lot going on, I'm not interested in talking to you, because obviously you're not prepared for the session, or you don't want to be in the session. So definitely understanding group dynamics is amazing. A lot of my counseling skills came from groups, doing HIV awareness groups or youth development groups. And especially with the youth, you have that charmer, someone that's funny, has a sense of humor, a joker. You have someone that's serious, never wants to share anything, but every now and then they may blurb out something. Then you have someone that think they're above the group and you're equal, so they want to co-facilitate the group with you. So those are some of the dynamics or behaviors I've seen show up in group dynamics or even in the classroom. So I think that's kind of how group dynamics, and knowing how to keep the group on course. Not really identify with each one of them, but show that each individual in the group, it's fine for the individuality, but always bringing them back to the common goal of the group and the shared vision of the group to move the group forward. Let me see, section 7, review of topics. Counseling in society. I'm at 9 minutes. I'm going to wrap up after this, and this would be session 7. That I'm just doing a little bit of, because then we'll be getting into the annotated outline for 2. No, I'm sorry. Move to 3. Right. So society, I know growing up as an African American Hispanic person, counseling is not something we believed in. We didn't do this. That was what I was taught. You go to church, Jesus will fix it. Pray to God, and the Lord will make it better. That's what Big Mom used to say, or talk to the family. What goes on in this house stays in this house. And it's been rough. I mean, I have, I know a cousin of mine that was sexually assaulted by someone that we knew in the family. They always kept it a secret, but as they got older, it came out. Thank God he was able to heal from that experience, But it took counseling, it took a lot more than church. It took a MSW and a licensed therapist to bring him, to terms for that and help him move forward, help him understand that he wasn't gay, something happened against his will. By the grace of God, he's married now with children, with his wife, living his life, and he's a survivor. He's not a victim. But it showed me just how society can mess you up, families can mess you up, because at MCNY we look at dimensions. Family is a system, and that's usually the first broken system that we interact with. So when we learn that all systems are broken, that is the first system you're exposed to realize that systems are broken. So I think I shone a little light on a few things here. I'm gonna go ahead and upload this video, jump right into the third one. Thank you.